Do you have any campus legends at your school? I once studied at a boarding school. At that time, my parents were very busy, traveling around the world, so they spent a lot of money and transferred me to a very remote private boarding high school. To be fair, the facilities and teachers in the school were great, but I was a very angry and rebellious teenager at the time, so I always spent the days dozing off in class and sneaked out of school at night. I was caught a few times, but my parents' perpetual absence meant each incident ended with apologies and donations, which emboldening my disregard for rules. Gradually, I realized I was the only one sneaking out of the whole school. At first, I thought other students were just too obedient, until that incident happened. After that, from the hesitant descriptions of other students, that I pieced together this story. It turned out that there was once a student died at the school, and since then, several students claimed to have seen strange things at night, so no one dared to walk out of the dormitories at night anymore. It was a bitterly cold winter day. After a heavy snowfall, the acacia trees in front of the boys' dormitory were burdened with snow. The branches, laden with snow, dangling in the air like severed limbs, while the broken ends revealed sharp, bone-like wooden splinters pointing ominously towards the dormitory. The incident occurred on the second night after the snowfall. For reasons unknown, a student jumped from the balcony on the third floor, plummeting straight down. Although the third floor wasn't particularly high, and a heap of snow offered a potentially soft landing, luck was not on his side. As he fell, he collided with the broken branch that encased in ice, which pierced his abdomen like a dagger in the frigid air. The sheer force tore him apart from the middle, like a jacket being unzipped, only this jacket was made of human skin. His innards spilled out, mingling with blood upon hitting the snowy ground. What was most terrifying was that the student wasn't dead yet. He hung from the branch, emitting weak moans. It took several minutes before finally succumbing. By the time the ambulance arrived, the boy's blood had turned to ice, creating crimson icicles that hung from his abdomen to the ground, staining the snow ground red. His entrails were frozen solid to the ground, and they had to carefully chip with a shovel to remove them. For the parts that couldn't be removed, they used hot water to melt them. With a hiss, the distinctive metallic smell of human tissue and blood rose up with the steam, spreading throughout the entire school. Since then, nobody dared to go out at night because of a chilling legend circulating within the school. The student who hung from the tree is waiting for someone to take his place. The incident was so horrifying that everyone avoided discussing it, and being new to the school, I was completely unaware at the time. That night, after waiting for the dormitory supervisor to finish their rounds, I stuffed an extra pillow under my blanket, then slipped out of the door. At that time, I was slender and agile, easily dodging the supervisor and using a spare key I had prepared earlier to sneak out of the dormitory building. After stepping outside, I suddenly heard someone talking not far ahead. I quickly ducked behind the greenery beside the dormitory door, holding my breath, trying not to make a sound. It was a security guard on patrol, probably making a phone call, muttering as he walked. I stayed hidden, praying for him to pass by quickly. But to my surprise, he suddenly stopped in his tracks, and then began to make some strange noise. I was very curious, so I cautiously peeked out to see what was happening. He stood there, gazing upwards as if he had witnessed something terrifying, and got too shocked to make a complete sentence, just muttering incomprehensibly. The dormitory lights had long been turned off, enveloping everything in darkness. I followed his gaze and saw a tree, but there was nothing else there. Was he drunk or something? I wondered, feeling both puzzled and anxious, my legs growing numb from crouching, hoping he would leave soon. Just then, this man suddenly plopped down on the ground, emitting groans that sounded like sobbing. Before I could see what had frightened him so much, someone grabbed the collar of my shirt from behind. Startled, I quickly turned around to find another student, approximately my age. This student had a pale face and wore a pair of glasses, giving off an air of studiousness. He pressed a finger against his lips and shushed, then whispered, Are you out of your mind? How come you're out at this time? Don't you know this place is haunted? Without pausing for a reply, he pulled me up and started running. I casted a quick glance back at the patrolman, noticed he was running to another direction. His figure was about to vanishing into the darkness, and where he had stood moments ago, there was an acacia tree with a vague shadow hanging from its branches, swaying as it stirred by the wind. I wanted to take a closer look, but the student grabbed my hand and took me run to the corner next to the dormitory building. After catching my breath, I finally had a chance to take a look at this unfamiliar student. It was early January, and the air was bitterly cold. The air I exhaled instantly turned into a cloud of white mist. Yet this student stood before me was still in autumn uniform. He stood there, showing no signs of fatigue or breathlessness from the long run. As I looked at his face, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. A sense of unease crept over me, but I couldn't quite pinpoint why. Then he asked, "Do you want to get out? Are you thinking the same thing?" I couldn't help but laugh, thinking, I never expected a studious type like him to be up to something like this. At least I found a companion for the night. The student remained expressionless and calmly replied, "Let's go then." Then, he walked towards the wall, leaping up effortlessly as if gravity had no effect on him, and easily climbed atop it, sat on there and extending his hand toward me. I was taken aback, but instinctively grabbed hold of it. The icy touch of his palm sent a chill down my spine. Beneath his shirt, I noticed a long piece of thread sticking out. Just as he was about to pull me up, sudden realization struck me, and I understood what was odd about him. The whole time, in such a cold day, I never saw a single of breath of cloud from his mouth or nose. Terror surged through me when I realized that. My hands instinctively releasing his grip, and I fell straight down from the wall. In my panic, I grabbed the thread sticking out from the student's shirt. With a resounding sound, feels like I've grabbed a zipper, and unzipped the person instantly. That's when I saw that the person's abdomen up to his chest was sewn together with black thread, and with my pull, I ripped open the stitched skin. With a loud splash, a pile of sticky, moist, and somewhat bloody organs fell all over me. As I glanced down, I saw entrails scattered all over the ground. The person then jumped down, picked up the organs from the ground, and began stuffing them back into his belly, muttering incessantly under his breath, "Help me pick them up, won't you? Help me pick them up." From that day on, I never sneak out at night again.
A friend of mine had to leave town for a while for work, and since there was no one to look after his dog, he sent it to my place, asking me to take care of it for a few days. Actually, I've been wanting to have a dog for a long time, but my busy work schedule made me hesitant, fearing I wouldn't have enough time to properly care for one. This opportunity was perfect for me to see what it's like. The dog, named Bubble, is a large breed with plenty of energy. It needs to be taken for a walk every day, or else it tends to get restless indoors. However, due to work commitments, I could only take him out after dinner. Thankfully, the neighborhood where I live is very quiet and peaceful, and I myself is a strong man. Taking a stroll around the area at night poses no problem. One night when I returned home from work, it was already quite late. Without even stopping for dinner, I took Bubble out for his walk. The moonlight was exceptionally beautiful that night, perfect for an early summer evening, while the cool breeze offered a soothing sensation against my skin. As Bubble and I enjoyed the serene atmosphere, suddenly, the distinct click-clack of high heels resonated through the quiet night. Then, I saw a woman approaching from the corner of the road. She was wearing a dazzling red dress that caught the eye, paired with towering red heels. In her hand, she held a dog leash, with the other end trailing behind her, disappearing into the darkness of the night. Wow, looks like I'm not the only one walking a dog at this time, I thought to myself. As she walked closer, I gave her a polite smile and said, "Hi." The woman grinned back at me but remained silent. Just then, Bubble, who had been leading the way, suddenly darted behind me, tucking his tail between his legs and cowering on the ground. He whimpered softly, ears pinned back, showing a mix of fear and alertness. I led him to the side of the road to comfort him, assuring him that everything was fine, just a neighbor passing by. Then I turned back to the woman, offering her an apologetic smile. Yet her expression remained unchanged. She continued walking ahead, smiling at me without a word. Her smile seemed a little stiff, somehow making me feel a bit uneasy. As she walked past, I was astonished to see that the other end of her dog leash was empty, with only a collar dragging on the ground. Then I noticed bloodstains on her heels. It seemed she had walked quite a distance in those high heels, as her feet were worn out at the heel. I realized I had never seen that woman around here before. But then again, my work keeps me occupied, and I don't interact much with the neighbors. But how about that bizarre scene? The more I thought about it, the more scared I got, so I decided to take Bubble home. For a while after that, nothing else happened, and I gradually forgot about the incident. Until one day when I returned home late from work again. It was after 10 p.m. and I took Bubble out for a walk. He was extremely happy and energetic that day, pulling me around as he ran. Yet somehow I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me from behind. As I ran, I suddenly felt someone tap on my shoulder, which startled me. But when I turned around, there was no one there, just a piece of rope hanging from the streetlight. The loop of the rope swayed under the light, probably hitting my shoulder as I ran past. Before I could check it closely, Bubble suddenly began barking wildly in the direction of the green belt. I felt a tremendous force on my wrist, and the dog leash tethering Bubble became taut in an instant. He then dragged me towards the edge of the green belt and dove in head first. The dense bushes immediately obscured Bubble's figure, as he seemed to be venturing deeper inside. Meanwhile, I struggled to pull on the leash from outside. However, Bubble's strength seemed to have inexplicably increased. I used all my strength, yet still couldn't manage to pull him out. However, it wasn't long before the commotion inside the bushes ceased. I couldn't see where he was, relying solely on the tension of the leash in my hand to sense Bubble's presence. Just then, I heard a whimpering sound, and shortly after, Bubble emerged from the other side of the bushes, looking startled as he lay motionless by my feet. A chill ran down my spine. Bubble had already come out, so why was the dog leash still so taut? What could possibly be attached to the other end of the leash? Just then, the leash in my hand suddenly slackened, causing me to fall backward onto the ground. The leash flew out of the bushes, and it seemed like something was still attached to the other end of it. I struggled to get up from the ground, and as soon as I raised my head, I saw the woman I had seen, still wearing the same red dress and red high heels as last time, standing right in front, looking down at me. She still held the dog leash with nothing attached to it. "What are you doing?" I stammered while the woman maintained her peculiar smile, remaining silent, only gesturing towards my side, to the dog leash which still remained clenched in my hand. Following her indication, I finally saw the thing that replaced Bubble on the leash. It was a human head. I screamed in terror, quickly letting go of the leash and tossing it aside, scrambling backward on all fours. But at that moment, Bubble charged forward again. He picked up the head by its hair and ran to me. I got up and sprinted away, but Bubble, carrying the human head, followed closely behind. We always play fetch together, and this time he must have mistaken the human head for the ball I threw and eagerly chased after me. I was so frightened that my legs went weak, and I sat down on the ground. Bubble caught up to me, and it was only then did I realize it wasn't a human head at all, just a black plastic bag. I looked back in the direction I came from, but the woman was nowhere to be seen. Still shaken, I slowly got up from the ground, recalling the details of what just happened. It felt too real to be a hallucination. Just then, the sound of the high heels started again from behind me. I felt my blood freeze and slowly turned around. There she was again, the woman in the red dress. She stood with her back to me, walking slowly towards the end of the road. Behind her trailed a long dog leash, and at the end of it was the human head I had just seen. Long after that did I finally heard of what happened. Years ago, before I moved in, there was a woman who lost her mind and cut off her cheated husband's head. Before taking her own life, she tethered his head to a dog leash, dragging it outside for a night. Rumor says she was a very nice lady and her soul was still wandering in this neighborhood. If you cross paths with her, she might still be smiling at you. with that dog leash in her hand.